Assalamu alaikum and good morning student. Today we are going to learn chapter number 15 of standard 9, life process in living organism. In this chapter we are going to discuss about central nervous system. Here in a central nervous system we are going to focus mainly on the function and the structure of brain. As you know, our central nervous system consists of brain and spinal cord, and our brain is mainly controlling part of our central nervous system. And where it is located? Yes, it is safely located in our skull. Okay, it is protected by our skull. It is located inside our cranial cavity. So here we can see there is a brain. Okay, so brain is located inside our cranial cavity. And spinal cord, where we have our spinal cord. Here you can see on the back side of our body, this one is what? This one is our spine. This is our vertebral column. And inside this vertebral column, we can see there is a soft, very delicate, a thread-like organ which is present. That thread-like organ, that one is our spinal cord. Our vertebral columns are there to protect our spinal cord. And what protect? Our brain is protected by what? Our brain is protected by skull. Okay, as our brain and spinal cord, both of this are very delicate, and that's why it is protected by bony skull and it is also protected by vertebral column. Space between this bony covering and delicate central nervous system, that means your brain and a spinal cord. So there is a protective layer between skull, bony covering and a central nervous system. That layer, protective layer, is known as meninges. Okay, and here you can see there is a cavity. There is a small gap, there is a small channel that you find in your central nervous system. So that is completely, that cavity, that channel are known as the ventricles, and these ventricles are known as, cavity inside our brain is known as a ventricle, and cavity, here we can find a cavity, okay, between this vertebral column and a spinal cord. So that cavity is known as the central canal. Okay, cavity between your skull and a brain, and the cavity between vertebral column and a spinal cord. Cavity between skull and brain, which is known as the ventricles, and a cavity between your vertebral column and a spinal cord, that is known as a central canal. Okay, so central canal and this ventricle, they are completely filled with fluid, and that fluid is known as CSF, which is also be known as cerebrospinal fluid. Function of the cerebrospinal fluid is to nourish our central nervous system and to protect it from shock. Let us now see different parts of our brain. Okay, as you know, brain is situated inside our skull. Okay, so let us remove the skull. So here you can see this one is our brain. So here you can see structure of brain. This is the largest part of a brain. This largest part of a brain is known as cerebrum. And if we will see cerebrum over here, okay, we can see there are two parts of a cerebrum. So these are the two hemisphere. Okay, there is a right side hemisphere and this one is the left side hemisphere, and this is one of the largest part of a brain. Okay, and this is known as the cerebrum. And then below that largest part we can see a smaller part, okay, which is also be known as a small brain, refer as a small brain, with what we call, this is the below one, this is a hind part. Okay, so that is known as cerebellum. This is a cerebellum. Okay, the largest part, the upper one, which is the largest one, and here it is divided in a two hemisphere, which is known as cerebrum, and the lower part over here, this is known as cerebellum. Okay, and below cerebellum, here you can see there is a ponytail like structure. That ponytail like structure is known as medulla oblongata. This is a medulla oblongata. Let us see the section of a brain. Okay, let us see the inside part of a brain. Okay, after we remove this frontal hemisphere, one side hemisphere, inside that, here you can see this is the uppermost part, okay, which is the largest part of a brain, known as cerebrum. Here this lower part, which is known as cerebellum, okay, this one is known as the medulla oblongata. This is known as pons, and here you can see this particular part, which is known as Corpus Callosum. This is known as thalamus, okay, and here you can see a gland, a peanut gland like structure, which is known as a pituitary gland. So these are the part of a brain. Let us see what are their functions. Before we will see the function of each part of a brain, let us draw structure of brain. Okay, the largest part of a human brain, which is known as cerebrum, and here in a cerebrum there are two hemispheres. These two hemispheres are joined with each other with help of tough fibers and a nerve tract. The cerebrum occupied 2/3 of the brain, hence it is also be called as the large brain. Function of cerebrum is to control voluntary movement, concentration, planning, decision making, memory, intellectual activities, intelligence. All these movements are controlled by our cerebrum. Next part of our brain is known as cerebellum. This is a smaller part of our brain which is situated below our cerebrum at the back of cranial cavity. Its surface shows a shallow grooves instead of a deep convolution, and a function of a cerebrum is to control our voluntary movement. Also, it controls our body balance. Next middle part of a brain is a corpus callosum, okay, and then the inside that there is a thalamus, hypothalamus and a pituitary gland. And here you can see this bulgy part which is known as pons, okay, and below a pons there is a medulla oblongata. This is a hindmost part of a brain, okay, middle part and a hindmost part of a brain. There are two triangular solen structure called as a pyramid on the upper side of medulla oblongata, and the medulla oblongata continue to form what? It forms spinal cord. Function of medulla oblongata is to control all our involuntary action. Which are involuntary actions? Such as heartbeat, blood circulation, breathing, sneezing, coughing, salivation, etc. All these are the involuntary action which is controlled by our medulla oblongata. So in our today's lecture, we have discussed about different parts of a brain and their function. In our next lecture, we will focus on structure and function of spinal cord. Thank you everyone.